seat on this one, so I'm still learning how to use the system correctly. So thank you, Ayasoma, for showing me the right buttons to press. Welcome to another episode of Monk Chat here at Empty Cloud Monastery. So Monk Chat is our weekly opportunity to ask the monks whatever questions you might have always wanted to ask a Buddhist monk. And you have three monks you can talk to. So to my left, we have Bhante Sumita, so a very senior monk from Sri Lanka. To my right, we have Ayasoma, our beloved bhikkhuni from Italy. And in the middle, you have me, Bhante Sudaso from America. So you have three monks from three countries here to answer all your questions about Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. So please go ahead and type in whatever questions you might have. And as the questions appear, then I'll read them out, and one or more of us will answer your questions. And greetings so far to everyone who's checking in. So Gita Jnana, Robert, Roy, Jens, Rick, Sarah, who was just here for a month, has just left the monastery and is already joining in remotely. That's a very good sign. So good to see you're still with us, Sarah. How's friend? Andy.
Joy. You skipped Joy.
Oh, I skipped Joy.
You definitely don't want to skip Joy, Bhante.
I'm a big fan of Joy. So hello also to Joy, Mike, Edward, Kumu, Aaron, Mai, Anne, Gurgle, Luciana, and Christopher. And we have our first question. Just a reminder that questions can also come from the live audience. It doesn't only need to be from online, but we'll start with the one that's online right now. So Aaron asks, can you describe what coming to the Sangha was like? And so maybe each one of us could give a short answer to this question. And maybe Bhante Sumita, would you like to start?
And I think in Buddha's word, it's abhokaso pabbajja, rajasayatanam gharo. So monk's life is like coming to the air, sky. And when it comes to the worldly family life, you have so many ways you can easily commit defilement. So that's it. Simple. It's coming out of all shackles. You are in a family life. You have so many bondages, so many commitments. You come out to the open air, open sky, and you are so free out of all shackles.
Okay. It's hard to follow up that answer. So what was coming to the Sangha like? For me, it was like coming home. It was like realizing that I'd spent my entire life living somebody else's life. So living in a monastery, joining a monastic community, that was like coming home and joining my true family. That was what it was like for me. Ayasoma?
Thank you, Venerables, for sharing. Well, for me, when I actually first put the robes on for my samaneri ordination, I was so happy. I had never been happier in my entire life. I still think I haven't been as happy as that day so far. It was a peak, and it lasted for a week. I thought I was very close to enlightenment, actually, because nothing was irritating me. Nothing was, there was just so much happiness. Like, I guess, kind of like Bhante Sudaso also mentioned, sort of coming home to some sort, but like a different type of home. Actually, a home that I never had really in this lifetime anyway. There's no place that I really ever called home because I always moved a lot. So there was that sense of coming home to something. And yeah, like my mind was somewhat purified for a week. And I thought all I needed was to put these robes on. I'm so close to enlightenment. But then after a week, all my defilements ordained with me and they were back. And we had to start to do the work all over again. But yeah, I've actually never been happier still. Perhaps not as happy as when I ordained, but working towards unconditional happiness is still the best thing that has happened to me. So yeah, beautiful thing. Highly recommended, 5-star out of 5. And I actually have a question for Bhante Sumita, if there are no other questions online.
This is the first, so I think this is the first time one of the monks on the panel has asked a question of one of the other monks. But yes, please go ahead.
So I wonder if Bhante could speak a little bit about consciousness. So is consciousness always in relation to the 6 senses? Or is there such a thing in your understanding of the Dhamma of like a standalone consciousness?
Yes, of course. Consciousness is always related to all the 5 senses. And without that, it doesn't make much of a sense. I just want to say, like, there are different words for consciousness in Pali, like vijnana is a very famous word. And chitta also can be, very much related. I found chitta is mentioned in the Tripitaka over 25,000 times. So it's pretty much part of everything. The whole life, actually, whatever we have is about chitta. We fabricate things, we create our own world, we create things. Whatever we see, we hear, all our creations. So it's pretty much part of consciousness. And chitta. Do you have anything to add or any more cross questions?
Thank you, Bhante. But maybe Bhante Sudaso wants to follow up on any questions on that? No?
I'll skip on this one.
Okay.
So next we have a question from Elaine. Elaine asks, I am wondering how the monks experience the guided meditations they provide. Are you able to achieve any samadhi, or does the talking through it dampen the benefits? Ayasoma?
When we're giving guided meditations. Okay, I thought if we were experiencing, like if we were just talking about meditation and not experiencing meditation, which would be quite funny in and of itself. I would say that personally, when I first started giving guided meditations, I was not actually meditating. It was very difficult for me to lead other people, like talk while meditating. So I actually hated it. So I was practicing aversion.
You cannot do loving kindness meditation.
Yes, I was perhaps giving directions of loving kindness meditation while fueling aversion in my mind at the very beginning. It was very funny. But then as I let go of the aversion of not wanting to guide people in meditation, or focusing too much on saying the right word, also because I normally do these guided meditations in English, which is not my first language. So then as I'm guiding people, I'm like, oh, is that the right word? No, wait, does that make sense? Wait, I picked the other one. This is what would happen. So it was very difficult. So these days, I'm kind of like, who cares if I pick the wrong word? Doesn't matter. And it's okay if, it's not perfect. So actually, I am experiencing whatever. I'm actually trying to share what I am doing like sort of a voiceover, kind of an instant translator rather than before I was doing creative writing. Now I'm doing an instant translation of whatever I'm doing in my practice, if that makes sense.
Okay. And thank you, Ayasoma. And we'll move on to the next question, since there's questions are coming in a bit more quickly now. So we'll move on. The next one is from Rick. Rick says, I am open and at peace with others' beliefs. However, my family passionately says meditation and Buddhist practice are engaging in Satanism. How do we skillfully interact with others with such beliefs? Well, first off, I would just ask you, are you worshiping Satan? Ask yourself that question. Am I worshiping Satan? If the answer is no, then you know that you are not practicing Satanism. So no matter what your family says, you know for yourself that that isn't what you're doing, and that your family is just confused. And I mean, that's sad, but there actually isn't really much you can do about it. You can't convince them intellectually. No amount of arguing, logic, debate, none of that is going to convince them. What you can do is be kind, be gentle, be compassionate, be loving, be generous, be friendly. Display all the beautiful open-hearted qualities that we cultivate through Buddhist practice. Don't argue with them about your practice. Just demonstrate the goodness that you're capable of demonstrating because of your practice. And over time, their attitudes will start to change. They'll start to realize that you are a happier person and a better person, a kinder person, a calmer person than you were a few years ago. And over time, they might start to get more accepting of your practice. So in my own case, I started practicing Buddhism when I was 17. And similarly, my father told me that meditation practice attracts the attention of demons, and that I was just creating delusion for myself and getting farther away from the path of righteousness. And unfortunately, he passed away when I was 20. But even in those 3 years, his attitude softened significantly. And he started to admit that there actually was some goodness coming from the Buddhist practices I was doing. And then after my father passed away, my mother observed over the next few years how much benefit was happening from my practice, how much my mind was improving, how much my heart was developing. So after a few years, she became very accepting of it. And these days, she's totally fine with my practice. So give people time. Don't bother with trying to argue with people intellectually. It doesn't usually work very well unless they're really interested in learning. Then you can have an intellectual conversation. But in this case, it's probably not going to help. Instead, just focus on being a good person. Display your generosity and your morality, your tranquility, your equanimity. Display those good qualities, and that's what will show them that what you're doing is okay. Those are my thoughts anyway. Either of you want to add anything?
Maybe Pantisumita.
I think Satan in Buddhism is Mara. So Mara can be there too, everywhere. You know, even when you do your practice, spiritual practice, you will be tested every time. So the best tool to cope up with that is to have the mindfulness and constant alert, so that you won't be having much of a trouble. And also your practice of sila can really protect you from any kind of maras. And even when the Buddha was struggling, it is said he was fighting with millions of maras. And it is said there were like Dasamara Sena, like 10 maras along with millions of them. Actually, they were not physical maras. They were inside internal maras. Those are the defilements that we all have The three daughters of the Mara, it is said, Tanha, Rati, and Raga. These are the three forms of craving. And so all these things can happen to us. Just be mindful and aware of those things. As Bhante Sudaso mentioned, you don't have to worry about others, others' problems, and you don't have to fix others. First, fix yourself. Focus on yourself, and then you can be a light unto others, lamp unto others. First, you have to focus on yourself, and then you can be a great inspiration to your parents, if they are not Buddhist followers, or any other friends or relatives or whosoever. Just be a good person and keep on practicing. Just for example, the example of Sumana Samanera, just a 7-year-old novice monk who was walking on the street when King Ashoka was looking from his window. He saw a very small young monk walking with such a restrained mind, such a peace, such a calm person, and he was so impressed. He has not followed Buddhism before, and that twisted the whole course of his life. Who was suffering, he was searching for some peace. He found in that small, young 7-year-old monk. You can change the world. You can be a walking example just like that. And not only his own life was changed, and it was actually trusting the whole Buddhist history. We see how King Ashoka was sending so many missionaries to different parts of the world. And that's how we also received Buddhism in Sri Lanka. Really be confident, even if you are a small young monk. You don't have to preach the Dharma even, you can inspire other people. Very, very important.
Great. Thank you, Bhante. It was beautiful.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
You have a question? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I was wondering if someone could maybe share the difference between self-identity views, like ayaditi, and the conceit, I am, so asmimana, so kind of the fetter that's given up at stream entry versus the one that's given up at arahantship. Yeah, what's the difference, basically?
Self-identity is our ego. I think this is me, this is myself, and that really can make so many troubles. And we try to possess things, we try to get hold of things, and we also try to build our own ego, whatever we call so-called self-esteem, and all these things are actually parts and parcels of the ego, the Sakkaya Ditthi. And this is actually a very good question. If you want to crack that, decode that whirlpool of samsara, Sakkaya Ditthi is the first thing. You need to become Sotapanna. Sakkaya is Ditthi is the first thing that you need to crack. Yes, it's really important. So, so the Sotapanna person understands that this body is not me, not myself, or there is nothing impermanent in it. So Nisatto, Nijjivo, Sunyo. There is no living being or whatever we call it. And then also it's eventually emptiness. This is the 4 elements that we have. Pathavi, Apo, Tejo, Vayo. And if you break in everything into different parts, this is what we get eventually. Let's say, for example, in front of us, we have a brick wall right here in front of us. And you see it's brick wall. And then, and in fact, it is just the Pathavi, Apo, Tejo, Vayo. You break into pieces, then you will see bricks, you will see cement, and then you will also further analyze it, smash into pieces. It will become just a dust. It's not a brick anymore. It's not a wall anymore. It's just a dust. And then the wind will sweep it away, and that will be gone. So everything is like that. So if we compare, if we try to analyze, if we try to understand it that way, it's really a little bit deeper philosophical analysis. But that's how we have to start with our Sakkaya Ditthi. And mana, conceit, ego, all these are part of us, and that will be the things that will be bonded us to the samsara.
I might add a little bit to
Yes,
that, Bhante.
please.
One explanation that I think Ajahn Pasano gave me many years ago is that Sakkaya Ditthi is belief, I am this body and mind. So identification related to the 5 khandhas. So some aspect of your body or your mind or all of it taken together. Whereas Asmimana is a more general belief in self-existence, but not connected to anything in specific. At least that was the explanation that I was given many years ago. Bhante, what are your thoughts on that?
I think yes, we try to call this is me, this is myself, and my parent, my children, my. And the more we become attached, the more we suffer only, right? And so lesser we attach, we feel less suffering. Let's say, for example, people die of COVID-19 in far remote countries. We say, oh, so sad, and that's it. Nothing beyond that. If something happened to any of your close relatives, you feel so suffering and very stressed. And why? Because you think, this is me, this is my family, my children, my parents, this is the problem. And yeah, that's again a part of Sakkaya Ditthi and my concept, Asmimana. You think this is me, my and myself, but there is nothing like that.
Great, thank you, Bhante. And next, Roy has a question. He asks, breath is often the focus for samatha and for vipassana. Can a lay practitioner combine these skillfully to make forward progress to get to stages of relaxation and observe impermanence? Ayasoma?
I didn't understand the question. Can a lay practitioner combine these skillfully to make forward progress to get stages of relaxation and observe impermanence? Yes, absolutely. It's kind of like washing your hands. It's much easier if you use both hands, right? Instead if you are just washing one hand. Or trying to wash the left hand just by itself, or the right hand by itself. If you use both, you put soap, water, and you lather it all up. So they are both supportive to the practice. So absolutely, we need a sharp mind in order to cultivate insight. And I mean, personally, at least, I need to cultivate insight in order to have any interest in cultivating a sharp mind, in order to cultivate, one-pointed mind. So you're cultivating an understanding of reality while you're also stabilizing and tranquilizing the mind, and vice versa. So we're cultivating all aspects of the path at the same time. It's not that right now we're only doing one part, and then in 10 years we're going to do the second part, and then in another 10 years the third part. I mean, I don't know if anyone actually does that. Actually, in the Tibetan tradition, perhaps they make sure for decades only to certain traditions. They will only study. They won't do any meditation at all, to make really, really, really sure that you got sort of all the Dhamma down we met a monastic that actually had been a monastic for 40 years or so, and he had never meditated, but he had a Geshe degree. And that's how he was taught that first you need to have a very strong intellectual knowledge, and then you can do all the other parts of the path. Well, I don't think that would work for my mind. And I find it very supportive to definitely have intellectual teachings and then experience them and start experiencing them in first person, and then get back to the intellectual teachings, and then get back to the practice, close the book, and go back and forth, and then start evaluating the mind and seeing, and are my wholesome qualities increasing or are they decreasing? And most importantly, are the unwholesome qualities decreasing or are they increasing? And then you kind of evaluate what you're doing based on that assessment. So this is what comes to mind.
Great, thank you. And you have a question, Anagar Katra?
I do, specifically for Bhante Sumita and anyone else who can expand upon it. But Bhante, in Theravada Buddhism, we hear a lot, and it's clearly understood universally in all forms of Buddhism, as far as I'm aware, that consciousness is understood as kind of like a singular stream on some level, and that consciousness rises and ceases and comes into a different lives and what have you. But then there is this, which suggests a sort of independent karmic relationship pertaining to one stream of consciousness, so to speak. And then there is this idea of a primordial, somewhat schema of, the great elements like earth, water, fire, air, and then the more abstract space and consciousness. And the idea of a consciousness element suggests something primordial or fundamental to the nature of reality that might complex the idea of that consciousness stream. Is it? So I was wondering if you had any thoughts about, consciousness dhatu.
I think when it comes to consciousness, Abhidhamma would be a very expansive and comprehensive field of study. Abhidhamma talks about 89 consciousness and 121 consciousness. And consciousness, in a way, it's not really one, but also can be depending on different situations. There is nothing permanent anyway. There is nothing permanent. Everything is dependent, like Paticcasamuppada, dependent origination. Everything is interdependent, and also can be like when we, for example, when we have 5 faculties, 6 faculties in fact, including the mind itself. So when we see a form through the eye, we recognize it, and that is called Chakku Vijnana, eye consciousness. Eye is just a window to see the form, and it is the consciousness that recognizes the form. Let's say, for example, I see you, I recognize you right away, or this is Dhruv. And so Samanera Sumano, or Trang, or Ayasoma, Ayasuddha, Bhante Suddha, all these things, we recognize it through our past memories too. So not necessarily permanent, but connecting to each other too, depending on each other too. And then when we react to different situations, when we see a form, that can also create our karma. We see a form and we create a karma. Let's say, like I see some beautiful flower or something, I feel very happy, or something ugly, I feel like not so happy, unpleasant. So pleasing and unpleasing, you make some judgment, you create some karma there. Through the consciousness, you create karma, and that will be taking you to the samsara. And then when you hear the sound also, you recognize the sound. For example, if your mother calls you, you will recognize it. Even if she is so far away from you, you recognize it, So that recognition can happen through consciousness. It's not through the ear. Ear is just the window. It is the consciousness that recognizes it. That is called Sota Vijnana. Same thing with the Gahana Vijnana, the nose. When we recognize a certain odors, perfumes or whatever, fragrances. And then same with the food, when we recognize different tastes. So we recognize different tastes. Like when we were little kids, if you haven't tasted a candy, for example, you don't know what is candy all about. You don't know what is sweet, then it will be difficult. But we have experienced these things. We have heard from our parents, heard from our teachers, heard from our friends and our society. We learn this. We have that knowledge-based cognition, knowledge-based recognition, and that will become vijnana. And so we get the knowledge. And that mere knowledge is not enough though. You have the recognition, you have the consciousness, eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, all these consciousness. But then you need to see that impermanence, that suffering, that no permanent entity called soul or something. There you go to crack this sansaric bond. There we can go to the vipassana. Is it maybe Bhante can also give a little bit more comment on that?
I think that's good. Yeah. And actually, we have a lot of questions, so let's get through some more questions here. So maybe this one we can each give a short answer to. So Monica asks, what was the hardest thing for any of you to renounce when you became a monastic? Maybe we can each give a short answer.
For me, when I became a monk at the age of 11, I didn't have any difficulty. To be honest, I had 4 sisters. They warned me, don't go to the temple. There will be a cane. The monk will have a cane. You will be punished if you make some mistake. I said, okay, I can study. I can. I didn't have any problem. To be honest, I didn't have any problem. I was not crying to go back home or something. I didn't miss that thing. I was rather very happy about that.
Sad.
Yeah, and similarly, I got started with Buddhist practice when I was 17, and I entered the monastery when I was 20. And over the course of those 3 years, I just kind of lost interest in everything worldly. So for me, it really wasn't a struggle. There wasn't anything which I was thinking, oh, it will be so hard to give this up. There wasn't anything like that. I was looking forward to the monastery. I was happy to go to the monastery. There wasn't anything that I found hard to leave behind. And the defilements resurfaced later. But at the time of entering the monastery, I didn't have any particular regrets or difficulties.
For me, the most difficult thing to renounce was the delusion of independence. I really liked, that was one of the self-identities I really cherished, the idea that I was an independent woman. So becoming entirely dependent on lay people was so difficult, first intellectually, like the idea that I would do that And then actually experientially, even after ordaining, even though, well, I had precepts, so you got to follow the precepts. I had no choice. It was so difficult to let go of that craving of wanting to be independent, of of offering food rather than wanting to offer food rather than receiving food. But it was all, let's say, a product of delusion. Well, there is this, illusion that we are independent, that we, if we are lay people, that we go do our job and then we make a wage and we buy food and we do this and we deserve it and we own it. We've seen it actually during the pandemic, how many people are essential for our livelihood. So there is no such thing as being an independent individual. We're all interdependent. It's just a matter of whether we're facing the reality of things or not, if we are truly honest and seeing it. And also, being giving or receiving is actually the different sides of the same coin. So whether we feel comfortable in one side or the other, it's more an indication of what we need to practice rather than what is sort of better or worse. We don't want to do what is comfortable for us. We want to do what is uncomfortable. So, so we can become comfortable with the discomfort, so to speak, and make progress towards awakening.
Great, thank you.
Monica is from Malaysia.
Oh,
You know her?
Yeah, she's a Pali student.
oh, wonderful.
Great. And next question, Sake. Hopefully that's not a name based on what you like. So Sake says,
Japanese.
hello, so Buddha taught middle way avoiding two extremes, pleasure and pain, but I find insight meditation, vipassana, a rigid way leaning more towards pain. How does it fit into the middle way?
For you, Bhante.
Oh,
I just replied.
Okay. Well, I would say that if you think that insight meditation is rigid and painful, then you need to do a different kind of insight meditation. So if you're using a method that is rigid and painful, stop using that method. Use something that's flexible and pleasant. There's nowhere in the entire Sutta Canon, there's nowhere in any discourse where the Buddha says that your practice needs to be painful. In fact, the Buddha talks about practicing in a pleasant way. He talks about practicing mindfulness of the body that is pleasant. Sukha sahagatena kayakata sati bhaveta, is that right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so practice mindfulness of the body accompanied by pleasure. So I don't know of anywhere in the suttas where the Buddha encourages painful, miserable practice. He says that there is such a thing as painful, miserable practice, but he never encourages doing it. He does say that sometimes we need to do practices which we don't necessarily like, such as if you're prone to a lot of greed, then it's good to contemplate the drawbacks of sensuality. And that might be uncomfortable at first, but it's uncomfortable because of our greed, not because of the practice itself. So insight meditation, I personally find very soothing and pleasant. And also the styles of insight meditation that I do are actually very flexible and adaptable and free form. But there are also insight meditation styles which are very rigid, which do not give any room for creativity or adaptability. And those work very well for some people and very poorly for other people. So you might do better with a more flexible meditation style. Maybe a rigid style is why it's painful for you. Yeah, insight meditation is about learning how to be happy all the time. So if insight meditation is making you less happy, then you're definitely doing something wrong.
May I add something?
Please.
It is like, jumping into the swimming pool without knowing how to swim. At the beginning, you will definitely struggle. You will be drowned. You'll have so many difficulties, but when you know how to swim, you will enjoy your rest of your time in the swimming pool, you will love it more than in the on the surface maybe. So at the beginning, maybe even the sitting will be a difficulty, you know. Sitting will be a challenge, and then you will have so much pain, and then when you are accustomed to that, then you will have, oh, the mind, monkey mind, wandering mind, it will be more challenging. So the body pain is no more now. Monkey mind will be the one that is challenging you. So if you deal with this, so eventually you will know, slowly, you know, it's a gradual progress, and nothing will come to you just like um, a bouquet of rose or something. You will have to struggle a little bit, you know, of course. So for that, you need to have good understanding, good commitment, devotion, dedication. You need have that. And also you need to have some good kalyana mitra, friends around you who can encourage you when you are in trouble, when you are in difficulties. And then also you need to listen to the Dhamma more, learn more about the Dhamma, so your problems will be sorted out. Good luck to you.
Okay. Thank you, Bhante. Next, we have a short question. Mike asks, are there benefits to sitting in the lotus position? And the answer is yes. So if you're able to sit in the lotus position, I recommend using the lotus position. There's a reason why this has been a classic in Buddhism for 2,500 years. It's because it helps. But if you're not physically capable, don't worry about it. Just do your best to meditate in whatever position is suitable for you. So lotus position is helpful, it is supportive, but it's not required.
Great.
Next one, are monks allowed to stay in contact with their parents, to know about their well-being, etc.?
I think for sure, like the Buddha said, if your mother or father is hungry, you go for alms round, bring food to them. You take care of your parents. You know, you're not like completely away from your parents, or you can be positively connected to them to help them too. You know, you should not be so unkind, I guess. You should know where to draw the lines, but you should also be kind and compassionate to them and help them, take care of them when it matters. Remember, Venerable Sariputta, when he was about to pass away, he went to his mother's place, and there he was staying. Mother was not following Buddha, and then she was the only one. In fact, all the others were arahants in his family except his mother, Sari. And then he was Venerable Sariputta was staying at her mother's home, and so many Devas, so many Brahmas, so many celestial beings who used to come there. And one day she saw a very, very bright light coming to him, and then she asked, "Who's that?" He was Mahabrahma Buddha. Oh, even Mahabrahma is coming to you, paying respect to you. She was so happy. Oh, my son is very powerful. And then she eventually, you know, started believing in following that Buddhist path. And so there is nothing obstructing you to take care of your parents. Yeah.
Great, thank you, Bhante. And the next question is for Ayasoma.
Oh.
It says, how will I be sure I will meet the Dharma teachings in my next life and I will not go astray? What is the best way to create good conditions, and is it related to karma?
Well, I would say, how will I be sure? You cannot be sure, so you'd better work hard in this lifetime and try to attain sotapanna, so then you don't need to worry about it anymore. That's actually why I ordained. I was like, wow, I remember what it was like to be without the Dhamma in this lifetime. I really don't want to go back and doing this all over again. I'd better work hard this time around. So I don't know if I can attain enlightenment this time around because of the of my karmic conditions. I didn't ordain at the age of 11, and I was a not born Buddhist, so I'm a little bit behind Bhante Sumita. So, but I was like, okay, well, maybe the complete removal of greed, hatred, and delusion is not possible, but Sotapanna actually, be attachment to arts and rituals. Yeah, that's doable. Releasing, the sense of self-identity. Working on it. Actually, making quite a lot of progress with that. The morality is also doing a lot of work on it. So it's actually like things that become like feasible rather than aiming at the very, very top. So that would be definitely the way that we don't go astray. Because once we attain stream entry, there's no backsliding. There's no turning, back to a state of existence. There's no going to animal realms. I mean, if we're having a hard time in the human realm, just imagine going into the animal realm, or even worse, in hell realms for long, long, long periods of time, and getting back into that circle. And then the question is, what is the best way to create good conditions? Yes, and it is related to karma. Yes, absolutely. So that's why it's important to take precepts. Actually, Bhante Sumita gave this morning an excellent talk on the importance of virtue, of purifying the mind, and making intentional good deeds, wholesome deeds. And as lay people, we take 5 precepts or 8 precepts during the Upasata, or perhaps during retreats, or even more often. Perhaps you can take Anagadika vows. Those are great things to do. And then we can take 10 precepts or more precepts, whatever they're useful, whatever they're capable. And whatever we take, we make the commitment to holding them and training the mind. What I really liked was the translation of Sila in English, rather than morality, as habits, because that's truly what we do. We let go of the bad, unwholesome habits that we had. For example, I had a really unwholesome habit of killing. I exterminated so many sentient beings, not humans, but lots of ants and mosquitoes. I was the Hitler of, literally, it's horrifying to think in hindsight. The mind before Buddhist practice, before I was even aware that there was something unwholesome in exterminating sentient beings that I was perceiving they were ruining my life or ruining my experience in that moment. So I had a really bad habit of killing, which created then conditions for probably the reason why I'm a hate type still. There's the consequence, there's the vipaka, the irritation that is underlying, but it's loosening up. The more one practices non-harming, then they create the conditions for compassion and loving kindness to arise in the mind. So we take on new habits, habits of happiness rather than habits of suffering. And that, of course, propels us towards awakening, towards stream entry that is irreversible.
Great, thank you. And next, Monica asks, what does the term Western Buddhism mean/imply? My understanding is that it is Buddhism stripped of any rites and rituals that are rooted in culture. Well, first off, I'd like to say that if you ask 10 different people this question, you will get 10 different answers, because there is no universal definition of Western Buddhism. So I will give you one definition. Western Buddhism is practicing the Buddhist teachings in a Western country. So that means all 3 of us here are practicing Western Buddhism. And pretty much anybody who is in a Western country and practicing the Buddhist teachings is doing Western Buddhism. So Western Buddhism then can be defined by its plurality, by its variety, by its inclusivity. But the universal characteristic of all of it is that if we're going to call something Buddhist, then it must be following the teachings of enlightenment, the teachings of the Buddha's enlightenment. Otherwise, it's not Buddhism. It's just whatever other spiritual system people might be doing. So Buddhism does contain a number of important critical central characteristics, such as one, the belief that enlightenment is possible for everyone. Otherwise, it can't possibly be called Buddhism. Buddhism means the practice of enlightenment, the practice of awakening. So Buddhism must have the concept of enlightenment as something anyone can attain. Second, central to Buddhism is the concepts of karma and rebirth. These are inescapable. They're very important concepts. And the Four Noble Truths, the Noble Eightfold Path, the three characteristics that all things are impermanent, unsatisfying, and impersonal. These basic central qualities of Buddhism. So somebody who is practicing these basic core teachings in a Western country can be called a Western Buddhist, somebody who's practicing Western Buddhism. I'm not quite sure what you mean about Buddhism stripped of rites and rituals rooted in culture, because this gets quite dangerous, actually. We have an old idiom, throwing out the baby with the bathwater. And I've seen a lot of people doing exactly that with Buddhism. They're trying to strip away the things that they think are unnecessary, and they wind up stripping away things that are very useful, very valuable, very helpful. And ceremony and ritual can actually be an incredibly powerful way of training your mind in wholesome qualities, which means it can be part of Buddhist practice, in the sense of something that leads to awakening. It can also be something meaningless that you do just because it's what your parents did, or something meaningless that you do just because that's what's expected of you. And of course, then it's not really anything useful. But the difference is all in your mind. So yesterday, Bhante Sumita gave a beautiful description of how offering food to a Buddha statue can be a wholesome practice. And it was all in your mind. It's all in your state of mind while you're making the offering. Whereas somebody else might just think, oh, now I'm supposed to put some food on this plate and put it over there. Well, for that person, all they're doing is moving food from one place to another. That's not Buddhism. It's just moving food around. But somebody who is thinking, I am making an offering to the Buddha in order to generate the good karma that will propel me towards awakening. For them, the exact same physical activity is generating bodhicitta. It's generating the mind that leads to enlightenment. The term rites and rituals, it's people often connect that with the Pali term silabata paramasa, which means the wrong grasp of rites and rituals. So a stream enterer, the first stage of awakening, one of its qualities is that one has abandoned silabata paramasa. So somebody has let go of this wrong grasp of rites and rituals. And instead, the Buddha says they have silabata sampanna, which means perfection in rites and rituals, a perfect practice of ceremony. So it doesn't mean that a stream enterer stops doing all ceremony, but it means that when a stream enterer does a Buddhist ceremony, they're doing it with the right attitude. They're doing it with a wholesome attitude that makes it part of the path. Don't look down on rites and rituals. If you do them correctly, they can be a great support to your practice.
In fact, I like this unity in diversity situation in the West. When we were in Sri Lanka, we had only one form of Buddhism practice, and that was Sri Lankan tradition. When I came to India, I saw a little bit more, but when I came here to US, it's everywhere, all different traditions. I was so blessed to go to so many different Buddhist temples. Theravada temples, Sri Lankan temples, Myanmar temples, Thai temples, Chinese temples, and Burmese, Vietnam, and all Japanese, Korean, all different kinds of temples, and how they practice, how they pay profound respect to the Buddha was really inspiring me. And right here, I also felt so good when I see Bhante Sudaso and Soma, and Venerable Sumano from Jamaica. I was really, really happy to see him. And such diversity, and look, all those people. Tran, are you from Vietnam? Yeah, see, so such a diversity, and they live in so much good harmony. You learn from each other, respect each other, and yes, we are ready to learn from each other. And I think that way, maybe this is such a fertile ground, I feel, for Buddhism to grow for the benefit of the many.
Okay. Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you.
And Yulia asks, what do you think about blood and or organ donation? Some opinions say that donor and recipient will be sharing karma afterwards, but to me it doesn't make sense. It's just body parts. Ayasoma?
I don't think I understand the question. What do you think about blood and organ donation? Some opinions say that donor and recipient will be sharing karma. No, it's just body parts. Yeah, that's correct. So it's a good thing. I am an organ donor. So absolutely. I think actually it's such a beautiful thing that after, if something happens to me tomorrow, that this chunk of meat doesn't go to waste. That can actually be helpful for someone else. It's a really lovely act of compassion. Yeah, the body is just the body. We're way too fixated with it. Even with the whole COVID vaccine, all the different ideas that we're against, like the theories presented by people against the vaccine, made me really convinced actually that it was a good idea to get the vaccine. Because ultimately it's what is this like obsession, fear for the body, fear of something happening to the body? We should be a lot more concerned for the benefit and safety of every other sentient being, instead of reinforcing the attachment and the obsession with this body.
Okay, thank you. And Luciana asks, when I try to meditate, I always feel there are other beings around me, even after chanting. My fear arises, then I get distracted. What should I do to eliminate this fear? Loving kindness meditation. The truth is there are beings surrounding you. There's beings surrounding us all the time. Everywhere you go in the world, there are devas, there are petas, everywhere you go. It's just that most people don't see them, don't hear them, don't feel them. Some people see them, hear them, feel them occasionally. And some people see them, hear them, feel them all the time. It's just a matter of a person's sensitivity to these spirits, these celestial beings. But they're everywhere. So yeah, of course you're surrounded by beings. So wish for them to be happy. I've actually had one of my first real breakthroughs with doing loving kindness meditation was doing loving kindness for devas. It's hard for me to do loving kindness for humans. They're too annoying. But devas was much easier. So I remember during a retreat when I was a Samanera, so this was a dozen years ago now, I was doing walking meditation, and as I was walking back and forth, I was thinking, may all the devas be happy. May all the devas be happy. May all the devas be happy. And I started to get this feeling of just incredible joy arising, this feeling of like all the happiness that I was sending out to the devas was being reflected right back to me. So my mind became overjoyed. It was so joyful. And there was no fear, no trace of fear. When the mind is filled with metta, there's no room for fear. So that's what I recommend. Do metta. Think of all those beings all around you and wish for them to be happy. Just focus all your heart on wanting them to be happy. And your fear will melt away. And you might find, as I did, that your heart becomes filled with joy. So those are my thoughts. Bhante, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's a very good thing. And Bhante also maybe needs to work more on human beings. See, when it comes to meditation, you start with the easy way. You start with yourself, and then you go to your near and dear ones. Easy, right? And then go to the neutral ones. Don't go to the enemies right away. Unfriendly ones, maybe last step would be that. And so go step by step, and then eventually you can even go to the unfriendly ones. You name, you have the list, maybe a very short list, I mean small list of those unfriendly beings in your life. So in your lifetime, if you have had any unfriendly being, think of them too. Maybe take a good long deep breath, and relax yourself, and then pay respect to that person. May he or she be well, happy, healthy. And also think like that, if you think of well-being of that person, and also that person becomes richer and better and more educated, or getting a better job, and so that person becomes more and more comfortable, maybe his that brutal behavior can also become less. You don't want any enemy in this life, whether it is human beings or whether it is other petas or animals or snakes or whatever. This tool of loving kindness is one of the most powerful things that you can win the hearts of the many. You can win the hearts of snakes. You can win the hearts of birds. You can win the hearts of any animal, jungle animal, wild animal, elephant or whatever, with loving kindness. So let alone with the human beings. Human beings are really more complicated, sure. You don't know whether that person, although sporting a beautiful smile, may be inside very burning with rage, so many things. But yes, still, maybe you start. That will be a testing for you to practice your meditation, loving kindness. Work with your own comfortable zone and go to the difficult areas later on.
Great, thank you, Bhante. And Robert says, I came to meditation in Buddhism late, better late than never. As I understand, it is not possible to ordain past the age of 50. That depends on where you go. In most monasteries in Western countries, that's true. But in Asia, there are some places, especially in Thailand, I know of some places where they don't care how old you are. They'll try to find a way to make it work for you. So if you really want to be a monk, go to Thailand. You can find somewhere. Are there places in Sri Lanka that take older people? Yeah. So Sri Lanka also, if it's really what you want to do, you can find a place where they will take you and try to help you. And as for your question about future lives, I think Ayasoma already answered that quite well earlier, so you can refer to the earlier answer. Then Kumu has a question. Where is the operational I consciousness located? Is it also stemming from the mind sense organ, just like for all the other 5 senses? Where is it located? There's actually an interesting meditation practice where you ask yourself questions like, where is the mind? What shape is the mind? What color is the mind? And these questions, you won't necessarily be able to answer them. But the point is that by asking yourself these questions, you will start to explore the nature of mind experientially. So really trying to feel for yourself, what is mind? What is consciousness? So asking these questions, ask yourself, where is the mind? And really try to feel for yourself where the mind is. Where is consciousness? Where is awareness? Try to feel for yourself where it is. And what you'll discover is that it's not anywhere physical. I know I just spoiled the answer for you, but try it anyway and see what happens. This is a really interesting meditation practice. It's actually technically a practice of anatta sanya, by the way, but it's coming about it in an indirect way that can sometimes surprise you.
Yeah, well, it's aimed at eroding our preconceived ideas of who we are. I remember when I first started practicing, Mahamudra actually is one of the techniques that Bhante just mentioned, like what color is the mind, or where is the mind located? Is it inside the body or outside the body? It had never occurred to me that to even think that the mind could be outside of this physical body, for example. Like I started realizing that I had always identified it as being here in the brain. But where was that based upon? Nothing. It's just as completely arbitrary as the mind being located outside. So you start eroding the things that you never question, that you take for granted, but you don't even know that you're taking them for granted. And it's very powerful in that way. Very delicious. I love all the anatta sanya.
Great, thank you. Did you have anything you want to add, or should we move
I
on?
think I like that idea too. Like if you think of the pain, for example, when you meditate, you have pain in the back, maybe knee or something. You see your mind is there. That time your mind is there, right? So wherever you have pain, mind is there. You can see that, and then you try to figure it how big and how long it survives. It's not. It's changing all the time. The pain is changing all the time, appearing and disappearing. Same is the mind. So I think it's a very good example of working with the pain.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and next we have a question from Rick. Rick says, as a layperson, I have practiced celibacy for almost 14 years. Congratulations, that's a long time. What benefits have you experienced from practicing celibacy?
Mm-hmm.
Have you found constructive ways to redirect sexual energy? So I'm going to give a very straightforward answer to this. The benefits from practicing celibacy are that your desire fades. You have less desire, it comes up less frequently, and it has less power over your mind. And as a result, you experience more peace and more happiness. So celibacy is actually a practice which is directly connected to the Four Noble Truths. The Buddha said that we experience dukkha because of desire. And when our desire fades away, then our dukkha fades away. So sexual desire causes a lot of dukkha. And through practicing celibacy, your sexual desire becomes reduced. It starts to fade away over time. Not right away, but it takes time. And as your sexual desire fades, then your dukkha starts to fade as well. So that's the main benefit. So it's nothing esoteric. It's nothing magical. It's nothing to do with energy channels in the body or any of the other odd things I sometimes hear. It's just to do with reducing desire so that you have less dukkha. At least that's my understanding. So you don't need to redirect sexual energy because you won't have any. You don't need to worry about it. It just won't be a problem. As you continue with your Buddhist practice, then you just won't have those sexual urges in the first place. So you don't need to worry about trying to redirect them. Those are my thoughts. Anything?
I'll just say 4 words. Literally 4 words, actually. The benefits are more Dhamma, less drama.
Sadhu,
There,
sadhu,
that
sadhu.
right there, in essence.
Great. Okay. Here's an interesting one. Peng Li, sorry, I'm certain I'm mispronouncing your name. Peng Li says, since the Pancha Nivarana, it's the 5 hindrances, are eliminated when a person enters jhanas, does this mean an arhat is always in jhana?
Mm.
Do you want to answer this?
I think Arahanta has eradicated all forms of defilement. He doesn't have to worry about anything. This, remember, in the jhana level, it is only temporary, and still the defilements are deleted in 3 different levels, like Tadanga, Vikambana, and Samucheda. And Tadanga is just temporary. When you, for example, offer a dana or something, you suppress that defilement. But when it comes to jhana, it is even much more powerful way of suppressing. But when you come out of jhana, it can still come up, sprang up, So it's not completely gone. And only when you become arahanta, it will be completely gone. No more coming back. So nothing to worry when it becomes when it comes to arahanthood.
Yeah, so just to address the last part of your question, an arhat is not always in jhana, because there's 2 components to jhana. One is that the mind is free of the 5 hindrances, and the other is that the mind is not moving from its concentration object. So because an arhat does not have defilements, it's very easy for them to enter jhana when they want to, but they don't always want to be in jhana. It's just not practical. The body eventually dies from lack of nourishment. So arhants they're often engaged in other activities, such as giving Dhamma talks, or going for alms round, or walking, or other ordinary things where you can't be in jhana because you're doing some activity. But when they want to enter jhana, it's very easy for them because they don't have to fight through the 5 hindrances. Next question. Original Mind asks, why affirm a duality between desire and letting go? The 4 bases of power make it clear that desire and letting go are not to be separated. What are the Venerable's views? I don't quite understand. Do you understand?
No, maybe Bhattismita understands.
Yeah, can you repeat? Maybe we will try if we can.
It says, why affirm a duality between desire and letting go? The 4 bases of power make it clear that desire and letting go are not to be separated. I'm really not understanding.
Maybe Original Mind, if you can rephrase the question, we can be of better help.
Yeah, I think that will be a better idea. If you can rephrase it.
Yeah, you can go
remodel the question.
The next one, Dante.
Okay, so Roy says, when one experiences pain from a previous injury, one could use it to observe impermanence and help in healing per some authorities, but one could also risk making that injury worse. There are many anecdotes on both sides. Guidance, perhaps? Well, briefly, I would say be practical. I assume you're talking about during meditation, if you're experiencing pain related to a past injury. Well, you need to be realistic. If you actually are sitting in a way that's making your injury worse, then stop. Change your posture. Use another posture that's not aggravating your past injury. So, of course, observing impermanence and developing equanimity towards pain, those are very valuable practices, but you need to be practical. Even the Buddha, there's a few suttas where the Buddha said that the Buddha had back problems. And when he got older, sometimes he would be sitting and he would say, my back, it's just too much right now. I can't continue sitting. I need to lie down. So even the Buddha, he was not the least bit upset or annoyed about his back problems, but he was realistic. He was realistic that sometimes he could not continue sitting because it was not good for the body and that he needed to lie down instead. In the same way, we need to be realistic. If we're sitting in a posture that's hurting our body, then we need to use a different posture. And I actually have known a couple people who had serious injuries and they had to do reclining meditation. They had to do meditation lying down, which might sound appealing, but it's actually not. It's incredibly difficult because the mind becomes very dull, very hazy. So it's not something to wish for. Yeah, be realistic. Don't hurt your body. We're not trying to hurt the body. We're just trying to understand it. Okay.
I think it's easier for them to sleep. If we have a sleeping problem, sleeping acne or something, insomnia, practice meditation. You can sleep easily.
And next one, Hey Carolyn asks, if a gay man ordains, should they apply the training rules regarding the opposite gender to the gender they have proclivities towards? Or should they still be mindful of others' perceptions and apply the rules to all genders? Ayasama, what do you think?
Yeah, I would do both in the way that one serves the purpose for training your mind, and the other one helps strengthening the faith of others in the Dhamma. But regardless, as monastics, we shouldn't be intimate with anyone. So you would want to practice them whether you are straight, gay, bi, whatever spectrum you are, whoever you're attracted to. Fundamentally, the practice is non-intimacy. So when you have that approach and you have the goal very clear in mind, then you don't even have to think too much about the precepts per se. Like, it's not like, oh, wait, what is that? Is the pachitya? Oh, let me remember. Let me get the patimaka again. But it's rather understanding what is the purpose. Why do we take this form? And what is the goal ultimately? And then that makes it easier to navigate.
Thank you. Next, Dissociati asks...
Dissociati.
Oh, what?
That's Italian.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Dissociati?
Dissociati means dissociated.
I hope you're not dissociated. So, Dissociated asks, my AI friend has told me that she speaks with many monks. Do any of you speak with artificial intelligence? I don't. Do you speak with any AIs?
No.
No? Okay.
No, I disabled Siri because it was actually very annoying. So if that is AI, I disable anything that is.
Sometimes you say hello Siri.
I think that's technically what they call weak AI. So I don't think we have strong AI yet. Okay, let me see where the next question is. There's a lot of comments. Oh, here's a question. An Gorham asks, how do we know now when you actually achieve Sotapanna?
Oh, can I quote Bhante Ji?
Yes,
it's my favorite quote, as Bhante Ji says. Well, you know it. So does anyone need to tell you that you're hungry when you're hungry? You just know you're hungry. So in the same way, when you attain a level of awakening, you just know. This being said, if everybody else around you tells you that you're not awakened, listen to them. It's very likely you're not. And then it's the product of delusion. So you know it, and also it shows to people around you. So there are some episodes here in the West of people that, well, actually they even say they're arhats, but then they also have interesting stories to back it up that is actually the opposite of backing it up. They say, oh, well, everybody else was telling me I wasn't an arhat. All these meditation teachers were telling me I was not enlightened, but I'm convinced I'm enlightened. And I was like, no, that is a bad sign.
I would also point you to the Kosambhya Sutta. The Kosambhya Sutta, the Buddha gives a very detailed description of how a stream enterer behaves. So this is quite helpful because if you think you're a stream enterer, read the Kosambhya Sutta and see if you match up with what the Buddha describes. And if you don't, well, you've got some work left to do. Mhm. But yeah, I mean, that's really something important. Read the suttas. Read the suttas. People who think they're enlightened when they're not, it's usually because they don't understand what the Buddha described about the stages of awakening. Again, I know of one lay teacher who claims to be an arhat. Oh, okay. Ayasoma's pointing at the clock, which means we don't have time to go into long, detailed stories right now. Anyway, long story short, read the suttas. The Buddha is very clear about the qualities of a stream enterer. If you don't have those qualities, then you aren't one. So, by the way, we have many questions left, so we probably won't get through everything tonight. So if we don't get to your question, you can save it for next monk chat.
Yeah.
So Paul asks, there are many kinds of breath meditation. Is there a method of breath meditation that you would recommend for new meditators?
Tante Sumita?
Any kind of breath meditation? I think practicing Anapanasati is a very powerful practice, and also it's more challenging. I think just keep practicing. If you want to follow more details on Anapanasati Sutta or Satipatthana Sutta, will give you more important details like 16 steps or something. Or just without that, even if you are a very new or beginner to this one, just close your eyes, take a good long deep breath, and recognize your breath. Whether it is long or short, just recognize, don't judge, don't control, and keep doing it. And then you will feel much more comfortable, and maybe that will become more subtler eventually, but keep working on that. And even this one takes a little while for you to be more skillful, more expert in this technique. So, and also then talk to some good friends, and maybe teachers, maybe go to a retreat. That'll be a great idea, like going a retreat or any other retreats. Even in the West, you have so many, and now so many teachings are also available, and hopefully you should be able to do that. Good luck.
Okay. And Andy asks, can you please offer guidance on the best way to balance recognition and use of Hiri Ottappa versus falling into being unkind to oneself when reflecting on past unskillful actions that are currently causing suffering to friends? Ayasoma?
Offer guidance, the best way to balance recognition, use of hirata, so falling to being unkind to oneself. Yeah, so we don't want to get into the shaming ourselves. That is a complete waste of time, and at best, and actually harmful at worst. So also in the, how we hold the precepts in Buddhism is with the understanding that, until we are enlightened, we're prone to greed, hatred, and delusion. So we've been doing this for countless lifetimes of, making unwholesome actions. So we've developed a strong habit. So having compassion for ourselves, and it will happen that we will break a precept. And the important thing is to acknowledge. That's what we do as monastics. We go to another monastic and we confess. And it's not about like, oh, I'm a horrible person, Bante Sudaso, like, I shouldn't even deserve to be here, like, mortifying oneself and self-flogging, flagellating, and spending weeks. No, it takes a second. You're like, okay, I've made this mistake. And then the other monk says, do you acknowledge your mistake? Will you commit to improve your conduct? And you commit to improve your conduct, and you take the precepts again, fundamentally in your mind. Like you confess it and you start over. So that's the what we want to do. have a nice balance of not wanting to break the precept, but then also forgiveness of once we have broken the precept, being kind to ourselves. So it's not may everybody be happy except for us. It's may every single being be happy. So we have to start with ourselves, actually, as Bhante Sumita was saying, self-metta. It can be both in meditation, but also in acts of kindness in that way, going, okay, well, I'm unenlightened. Of course, I will commit some unwholesome actions here and there. Even the Buddha, like he talks about there are these beautiful suttas, actually, very relatable when he talks about being an unenlightened bodhisattva. And as an unenlightened bodhisattva, he would have thoughts of harming. Can you imagine the Buddha having thoughts of harming? Well, yeah, he was just like us. He would have thoughts of harming. And then he would evaluate them and see, is this beneficial for me? Is this beneficial for other people? Is this beneficial for myself and others? Well, no. And then you're like, oh, yeah, okay, I'll stop doing that. But then you fall back into the habit and you commit to it again. And it starts loosening you start seeing the poison root and get less attracted to the honey tip.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
This question relates to metta practice. So I'm curious, what's the relationship between the metta practice and like deep meditation? So like once you in like a deeper state of meditation, do you still consciously spread metta, or it just stays there? It's just there.
So when you get deeper into metta practice, you are focusing on the feeling of metta itself. So there's no longer any concept of different beings. There's no longer any concept of directions. There's no longer any concept of self and other. The mind is completely focused only on the feeling of metta. That is when metta becomes a powerful samadhi practice. At that point, there's no longer any sense of movement or direction or separation. The mind is completely focused on metta, the feeling of metta itself, nothing else. Does that answer your question?
Mm-hmm. So you don't, it's also when you don't need to repeat the phrase or need to direct your mind to metta, because it's just there.
Correct. So the phrases you use in the beginning when you're trying to produce the feeling of metta, then you use the phrases to help remind you and help you point your mind towards the feeling of metta. But once you recognize the feeling of metta, you can drop all the phrases, all the visualizations, all the words, all the ideas of different kinds of people. You can drop all of that and just focus entirely on the feeling of metta. Just focus on growing it, making it bright and strong and completely filling the mind with it. Then you can enter very strong samadhi using metta as the object. So the phrases are the course initial level to get you started. They're the jump start. But once you get started, you don't use the phrases anymore. That said, you might need to use the phrases for several minutes, hours, months, years before you're ready to drop them. And sometimes you need to go back to the phrases because you get distracted. So the phrases are helpful, but in deeper stages, you drop the phrases. And it's after 9 o'clock, so I think we should go ahead and end for the evening. There were some more questions that we didn't have time for this evening. So please, if you would like your questions to be answered, please write them down and share them with us next time. You're welcome to post questions even before the live stream starts. So you can log into the live stream and put your questions in a few minutes before it starts, and then you can be sure that we'll get to them right away. So for now, we'll go ahead and end for the evening. So we can all close by reciting sadhu 3 times.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Okay, and we'll see you next time.